What is up, my friends? Welcome back to another episode of Good Human. We have yet again a video episode today because I have another very special guest with me, another friend that I have made on Instagram who just has some of the best content, and I'm very excited to welcome her on the show. Today, we're going to be picking her brain all about friendship because I've touched on friendship in some past episodes, and I feel like anytime the topic comes up or you guys ask questions about friendship, I'm kind of in the same boat where I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how to make friends as an adult. I don't know how to navigate friendships like post college. It's a very different kind of situation once you become an adult. So, Iliana Flores is joining us today. She is a mindset coach and owner of her own business, Draw in Circles. It's a lifestyle coaching, and we are going to pick her brain today all about friendship. So, without further ado, Iliana, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you.
I'm excited as well. I want to just start off with like a little bit about you, like where you're from, what you do as a mindset coach, what you do in your business, whatever else you want to share with us to get us started.
I'm going to tell you the whole origin story so you can get
Yeah,
to know me a little better and then
perfect.
kind of just like how everything got started. So, I'm going to backtrack a bit to when I was younger. So, when I was younger, I had this mentality that I needed to be better than average. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but
Yes,
I
I
know a
feel
lot of
that.
times, right? Yeah. So I had that. And that kind of just evolved into this obsession for status.
Mhm.
And I worked so hard to get the best grades so that I could get into the best colleges and then I could have the best job. And that's really what I became laser focused on. And so when I went to college, I studied business. And after graduation, I got a full time job at a large consulting firm in the city. And I was making all this money and feeling like I had finally made it, right? Like all this status that I wanted, like I finally had it and I finally got what I wanted. But then why did I feel so unhappy? I think
Mhm.
what I realized was since in my mind I had felt like I had made it, all the other areas of my brain kind of started coming back because that one area of status quieted down, and everything that I was ignoring was really lighting up and showing all the cracks. And
Mhm.
I realized that there was just so much more to me than chasing status, especially when I was knee deep in this corporate environment where everyone's just trying to one up each other, show how much better they are than you. And I was like, oh my God, this isn't me. I'm not happy here. And I feel
Mhm.
so inauthentic. I really couldn't be myself, partly because I didn't know who I was without chasing that status. So then comes the transformation. So I really wanted to leave, but I knew I couldn't unless I had a solid plan in place. So I stayed and I figured myself out a little more. I was already going through this big growth transformation and I really wanted to hone in on what did I want to do if this really made me so unhappy. And
Mhm.
it was the midst of the pandemic, Black Lives Matter was going on, and it hit me that I was sitting here making a PowerPoint for this multi-million dollar company to make them more money. And I was like, I know I'm so much more valuable than this. And I can make a bigger impact than just being another cog in the machine. And so it hit me then that I wanted to make an impact on an individual level and not just a company level.
Mhm.
And all the points kind of just married and they fell into place, and I decided I wanted to do life coaching and walk people through the phases that I went to and the realizations that I got to. In the beginning of 2021, I quit and did not look back, and since I've started my business, Drawing Circles Life Coaching. So that's kind of
That's
just the whole
amazing.
origin story. Yeah, thank
I
you.
love that, and I really relate to. How old are you, by the way?
25.
Okay, so am I. I really, really relate to feelings of chasing goal after goal after goal. And especially for
Mhm.
me, I feel like that kind of came to a crumble like once I graduated college. I think a lot of people experience that like when you're no longer in that environment where you have all these like academic achievements to go after, you're left feeling a little bit empty and like who the heck am I outside of
Mhm.
me wanting to like achieve all of these things. So I totally relate to
Right.
that.
Yes, 100%. Like you just kind of don't have that structure. Now you're like floating
Hmm.
off trying to find like who you are. And to go a little deeper into like the business and kind of what I do,
Yeah.
um, so Drawn Circles, I'll just tell you like a quick little story about how I got to that name. That name was actually inspired by my favorite artist, Mac Miller. He has this song called Circles, and
Hmm.
I listened to it and I felt like it just really reflected all those feelings that I was feeling about like being stuck in this circle or pattern and like not knowing how to get out of it.
Yeah.
So what I do is I help people in their 20s, specifically women, figure out like who they are, what they want, and how to start building a strong structure and foundation for the rest of their lives. So like how I like to think of my business, kind of what you said too, is it's working with me is like the natural next step after leaving college or
Hmm.
starting your journey to adulthood, because there are so many things that we don't know, and there's so many things that we need to learn to start comfortably and steadily like navigating adulthood, which is why I built this business. So, being in your 20s, like it's such a transformative time, right? Like I said, we start to
Hmm.
lose this structure of school, and you lose this identity of being a student, and you've known this for so long, and then you start to grow a new identity of being an adult and having to find your own structure. And I know that so many people struggle with that and they need help. And so like what
Yeah.
that structure and foundation like looks like for me, and what I help my clients with, is like personal identity, figuring out like who you are and what you want to do. Then career path, like how can we figure out what we want to do for career and work that's meaningful. Improving relationships, whether that's making friends like we're going to talk about today, or like improving relationships with family or significant others. Then there's like upgrading skills like confidence and communication. And then the last piece, which is why I'm a mindset coach and it's my favorite part, is learning all about mindset and learn to change our mindset in those specific areas, in career, in relationships, and friends, so that we can start to build the life that we want, and where it's not confusing or hard. It feels easy and natural.
I think that is incredible because I know so many people in their 20s feel that way and feel so lost. And so to have some sort of resource like that and someone that you can work with to kind of explore all of those different areas, it's really important. And I'm glad there are people like you out there who are like pursuing this in life and helping people. And like you said, making a difference on that individual level. So I know I've gotten a lot of questions when I put up a little post on Instagram about friendship. So there's lots of
Mm-hmm.
people out there that are also in the same boat, feeling a little bit confused on how to address friendship in their 20s and like into adulthood. So
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to start off by saying that you kind of have been picking a topic each week on your Instagram where you've been focusing on that, posting things, and I've been loving that. And that's kind of how
Oh,
I
thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. That's kind of how I got this idea for the friendship because you had a whole week on friendship and I was eating up that content. Like it was so good. And one of your posts that I really loved was the different types of friendships that you can have. So I would love
Mm-hmm.
to dive into that a little bit because I found that super interesting.
Yes, let's talk about that. Okay, friends. I created this post thinking about my own friends.
Hmm.
Like literally I sat down, I'm like, okay, how can I categorize my friends? This actually happened because I was talking to my boyfriend and he was like, I see friends only as like people who I'm really close with, and like they know my whole life story. Like that's
Hmm.
those people are my friends. And I was like, okay, but there's other people though, like other people you might hang out with or just casually talk to. Like, what do you see them as? And he's like,
Hmm.
oh, they're just acquaintances. And I'm like, no, like there's categories to friendships. Like
Hmm.
there's different levels. People go deeper and some people don't. It's like not a one size fits all.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you feel that way, but that's why I created like these 6 types of friendships and like wanted to call it out, because I feel like there's people like him who think there's only one way to have friends. And if you don't have it that one way, or you don't have that many, that you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, that was definitely something that I felt when I saw that post because I also kind of have felt that where I've been like, I only have 2 friends because, I have those like couple handful of people that I'm talking to like every day that they know
Hmm.
like what's going on in my life. But I have so many other friends outside of that who I would absolutely consider my friends. And it just kind of made me realize that there definitely are different categories or different like circles of friendship that you can have.
Totally. So I don't know if you want to go through like each category or
Yeah.
each topic of friends. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So I started with like my ride or dies, like my homies that I can go to with anything, everything, and just completely feel like myself. So that's
Mhm.
category one. These are your ride or dies. These are people you speak to every single day, probably multiple times a day. And like I said, you can go to them with anything big, anything small. They're going to be there to support you, cheer you on, and most of all, make you laugh. Like this is so important in friendship. Like we need to laugh with our friends.
Mhm.
So that's group one. Like that's category one. These are your top. And then we move on to the second tier. And these are friends that they're really good friends too, but maybe you just don't speak every day. You don't see them. They might live in like totally different states, so you don't get to see them often. But they're the friends that when you talk to, literally nothing has changed. Like you can just pick up and talk to them like normal. And you
Mhm.
can talk to them about like big things too, but it's just not as often. So they're just at a like one stage below the like the ride or die homies. And then, yeah, I'd love to pick your brain if you have any thoughts on like, or have any of these types of friends too. Cause when I was creating this, I was totally just thinking about my friends and how
Yeah.
I categorize them. So I'd love to know if like you totally like resonate as well.
Yeah, already so far, I, like, am picking up people in my head. I'm like, "Yep, that fits into that category, that fits into that category," so I love this.
Yes. Okay. So then the next level, and I know I'm saying like one level below. This doesn't mean that friendships are like that these people aren't as good. It's just like your
Right.
friendship level and effort that you put in is not as much.
Mhm.
So the third level is let's talk when we can friends. And these are friends that you'll like send TikToks to or reels to, and you'll chat maybe like when you have errands to run or when you have a free 20 minutes. These friends are like maybe you used to be close, but now they kind of tinkered off or like, you're not as close, but you still do want to
Mhm.
keep that connection. You're not like ready to like leave the friendship at all.
Yeah.
And then the fourth group is the people that you just want to do something fun with. These are friends that either you go out for a specific reason, like I'm going to hit the bars tonight and I'm going with this person and this person. Like we're going to have a
Mhm.
fun time. Or they're the friends that you only hang out with in groups. So you might never hang out with them alone casually, but you would hang out with them if everyone is in a group and everyone's going to go do like a specific activity.
Mhm.
And then the fifth group is the I'll see you online friends. And these are the friends that you also probably used to be closer friends, but as time passed and as your paths took different routes, you just separated a bit, but you still follow each other on Instagram, you still follow each other on, socials. You'll comment and like, and you really probably will only speak to them through social media or through comments on your posts. And then the last group is the how is it going friends. And I called it this is because every time you speak to them, you're probably asking them, "Oh, how's it going? How are you? Like what are you doing?" Because you only
Mhm.
speak to them maybe like once a year, twice a year. It's not very often, but they're people that you still like and want to connect with, but don't necessarily feel like that gravitation towards them to speak with them all the time and to like know what's going on in their lives. You're good with
Mhm.
like once or twice a year checking in to see if they're like alive and doing well. So that's
Yeah.
kind of the categories.
The other reason why I love those categories so much is because I think there's some pressure sometimes, especially when you were once close with someone and they're maybe in like the category 3 or 4 now. There's almost like a
Hmm.
pressure to get back to that or a pressure to like get all of your friends to that ride or die level when it doesn't have to be that way.
Totally. I think the thing is like in your 20s, we're tired and we don't have the same amount of time to
Mhm.
devote to each friend. Like we literally just can't. It's not feasible. It's not manageable. So
Yeah.
breaking them up into structures is such a good way because you know how much time you can devote to someone. So
Mhm.
like I'm going to go on like a little tangent, but just to
Go
explain
ahead.
more of the categories. Okay, perfect. So I have a category 3 friend, right? Like we used to be really close. We probably were like a nothing's changed, so category 2 friend. But time passed and we kind of just stopped talking so much. And she called me the other day and she kind of upset me because a lot of things are just about her. She wants to talk when it's convenient for her.
Mhm.
She doesn't want to ask me any questions about like how I'm doing, or if she does, she listens and then is like, okay, gotta go. And could I sit here and be angry about that? Absolutely. Like, was I annoyed a bit? Absolutely. But then I remind myself, I'm like, okay, she's a category 3 friend. Like that means I've devoted less effort to her. And so she has
Mhm.
also devoted less effort to me. So I feel like I can't be angry at the level of friendship I have with her because I created that and so did she. And so
Mhm.
it's like I know what to expect from that friendship. If I want more, then I need to put in more effort, but I'm not willing to. So then I don't have the right to get annoyed with her or upset or bring it up unless I'm willing to put in that effort to bring her to like a new stage of friendship, which I'm not. So
Right.
it's like understanding when it's okay to just have friends that are at different levels. They don't need to all be your best friend, like you were saying.
Yeah, and I think that plays into some of the questions that I got that we'll touch on at the end. A lot of them were surrounding like cutting off friends or like no longer wanting to be friends with people. And I think there's an area of opportunity here within those different categories of friendship where it might not be that you need to completely cut someone off all the time. It might be you just need to like distance yourself a little bit, move them down a
Mhm.
couple levels in those different
Mhm.
categories of friendship. So I love that. I think that makes a ton of sense. Totally relatable. Resonates with me a ton.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah, like I said, there's not a one size fits all to friendship. And you can
Mhm.
choose like you want. Like if you're my boyfriend and you only want to have friends who are super close and they know your whole life story, that's your choice. Like you can totally choose that. But you can also choose to just be happy that you have friends and decide how much effort you want to devote to each person and then be happy with that and not expect too much from them or have them expect too much from you. So it's like there's a beautiful way to have like many types of friends and we don't have to force anything when we're probably so tired of like forcing things already.
Mhm. Totally. I think that leads into kind of the next thing that I wanted to talk about was some keys to having lasting friendships. So whether that be, your category 1 ride or dies or even some of those other categories, like what can we do to ensure that we have like healthy, long-lasting friendships?
Yes, that's a really good question. So I think if we're looking at like ride or dies, these are people you don't want to leave your life.
Mhm.
What you need to do is definitely just be open and be okay with being vulnerable with people because this is how you create stronger attachments, right? You're vulnerable, you share experiences, and you have someone hear you and understand you, and you do the same for that person. So if that means like telling them deeper things about, not just how your day is going and if something sucked, but like why something sucked, why you're feeling this way. Like your friends want to empathize with you and like give you advice and help you. So be open to doing that. And then
Mhm.
the second thing I would say is like I talked a lot about this on my Instagram on the friendship week. But what's most important is that you put love and connection above pride and ego. So I had this experience with a friend where she's my best friend, like my absolute ride or die friend. And, we kind of were having some distance because I was kind of blaming her for things that were not her fault. Like they were out of her
Mhm.
control. Basically, her boyfriend had come back. They were in a long distance relationship for 2 years, and her boyfriend had come back and he was obviously taking a lot of her time. And I just felt like, oh my God, like she doesn't have time for me anymore. Like, I don't know what to do. And I started like backing away. And like,
Mhm.
I was doing it under the guise like, oh, I want to give them space to like have their relationship and be together again. But really, it was like a pride thing. Like I was being bratty. Like I wanted her
Mhm.
attention and I wanted it like how it was, but I knew it couldn't be like that anymore. And so I kind of distanced myself a little bit. And because she felt that, she started distancing herself a little too. And there was a point when we were texting each other and it just felt so forced. And like, this is my
Yeah.
best friend who we talk about literally everything, like the most disgusting things to like the happiest things, you know? And I was like, oh my God, I can't let this happen. There was like a thought that popped into my mind where I was like, is this just going to be another friend that I lose? And I'm like,
Right.
the moment I thought that, I was like, no effing way. Like, no, I'm not going
Mhm.
to lose her. And I was like, I'm being very prideful right now. And what I need to do is apologize to her because I blamed her for things that weren't her doing, you know? I blamed her for me like distancing myself,
Mhm.
which was like totally not fair. So I came to her and we talked and I just basically was like, I'm really sorry that I did this to you. I noticed that I did this and I feel really, really bad because it wasn't your fault. Like it was 100% me. And then she was like, thank you so much for acknowledging that and noticing that and apologizing because I felt myself distancing and I didn't want to, but I just felt
Mhm.
it happening. And so that was like a situation where I'm like, I put connection and love before my pride. I was like, take my pride on a silver platter because I don't want it if that means I don't get to have my best friend, you know?
Yeah, and then stuff like that always brings you closer too. Like that's the kind of stuff is what strengthens those kinds of friendships. And I think it's important sometimes to like reframe the way that we think of friendship because there are so many similarities in romantic relationships as well. Like having that kind of open and honest communication within a friendship is really important and I know that's something that I struggle with too.
Yeah. I know it feels hard because you're like, okay, well, we're just friends. Like, we're not lovers. Like,
Yeah.
you know, how do you differentiate that?
Mhm.
But no, I totally agree with you. Like, you need to somewhat treat your friends like they are like really meaningful relationships. They are like
Mhm.
these people are going to be with you your whole life, hopefully, just like your significant other would be. So why wouldn't you treat them like you might treat a significant other? So
Yeah,
opening up,
totally.
talking, all that, super important.
Mhm. I know the vulnerability thing is something that I really struggle with as well because, like, in the back of my head, I know that's what makes those strong friendships, and I know that's what makes the bond stronger. But it's hard sometimes, especially I think as an adult when you're in college, especially. I found it a lot easier in that kind of setting to
Hmm.
get really deep with people and to be vulnerable with people, whether
Hmm.
you're in like organizations. I was in a sorority, so I had like tons of girls around me. It was easy to talk to, or whether you have like roommates and then you kind of graduate college, get a little bit older, and you're not in those situations where it's quite as easy to be vulnerable all the time.
Right. Yeah. It's like you just have to push yourself to do it. And it's difficult because you don't know how someone's going to take it. And that's kind of
Hmm.
like your defenses building up, right? Like you don't want to be hurt. So like you're not going to put yourself out there. But really it's like the being vulnerable is what attaches you to someone, but in a good way, not in a bad way, but attaches you to someone because they totally understand you and you totally understand them in a new way that's not been had before. So that's what really leads to like deep, lasting friendships. But let's say to keep lasting friendships, but at a level that's like lower. Some
Hmm.
people might say, well, like, well, why do I want to keep a lasting friendship with someone I'm not going to talk with all the time? But again, this goes back to the fact like, not all your friends look the same, not all the effort is going to be the same. So I think for me, like, I've had lasting friendships with friends who I do only talk with once or twice a month. And
Hmm.
it's okay because like having them as friends just brings joy to my life. Even the one conversation I'll have or whatever it is, like I'll probably learn something or I'll get to ask questions. I'll get to see, like, reflect on me as a friend and just like have a good time experiencing them and like creating a safe space for them to tell me things. So that feels nice in of itself. And to create lasting friendships that way, you don't have to get super vulnerable, because some of those friends, it's just not the right vibe to get like super
Yeah.
vulnerable with them.
Mhm.
Um, but you can just share things, like share a TikTok, send a reel, like share a couple memes, like keep the connection going. Because like these friends will show up for you, hopefully. If they're like good friends, they'll still be there for you when something happens or when times get tough and you need someone to talk to. So yeah, I think that's a good way to keep lasting friendships in maybe a lower category, is just to talk when you can.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that, and also just to point out that, like, different kinds of friendships can provide you with different value, like, you don't have to
Hmm.
have one person that gives you everything and fills, like, every cup for you, like, different people can do different things for you and bring different kind of value to your life.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like I have friends I'm not vulnerable with. Like I'm totally a jokester the whole time. Like we probably don't
Mhm.
know one deep thing about the other person, but we're still friends.
Yeah.
So don't discount those people. They're still your friends. Not everyone has to be vulnerable and share all your same experiences with you to be a really good friend.
Mhm. I love that too because I feel like that's so relatable and really validating for some people because, like I mentioned, I think there's some pressure sometimes to have, like, these super strong, intimate, vulnerable
Hmm.
relationships, and, like, you don't have to have that with everybody to have, like, different kinds of friends.
Totally. And I think like too, hearing you say that, I think on social media, it really like perpetuates it so much. Like, oh, you see people with these like big groups of friends and you're
Mhm.
like, oh my God, I want that. Like, why don't I have enough friends? And I used to think that too. Like, I always wanted just like a huge group of friends, like six
Yeah.
people or seven, whatever, like go shopping, go vacationing, like all this fun stuff that I was seeing on Instagram. And then I thought about it. I'm like, I have I do have a big group of friends, but they're all just siloed. They all don't know each
Mhm.
other.
Right.
And I started feeling down on myself for that, for having like siloed friend groups and not having this big friend group that I could, in a way, like show off. And I think that's what it was. I just really wanted to show off that like I had friends, or that I could make a lot of friends. It wasn't until I took a step back and realized, okay, I'm like, who knows how close each of those people are to each
Right.
other. We don't know the extent of their relationship. Like they might not even like each other. They like, who knows like what the level of friendship is there. It's better if I just focus on my friends and the people that I do have and be happy for that, rather than like comparing and wanting something that, like, what I don't really want. Like I love my siloed
Yep.
friendships. I love having that, just like it's just me and you kind of thing. Like you don't know my other friends, you don't know like some of my other personalities in a sense. Like I
Mhm.
like that feeling and I don't need that big friend group. So I feel like some people just need to take that time to reflect, like, do I need that friend group? Do I really want that? Or am I just seeing it so often that I'm like, my brain is tricking me into thinking I want that?
Totally, and that's so funny you mentioned that because I had quite literally the same conversation with my therapist once because I was like,
Hmm.
I see people on Instagram and like they have this big group of friends or like they're still friends with like 10 people that they were friends with in high school and they have that big group that, they're so close with. And I'm like, why don't I have that? And my therapist was literally like, do you really want that? Like, is that
Hmm.
something that you actually want? And I was
Hmm.
like, thinking about it and I was like, "You know what? No, I don't actually want that." But especially with social media, it's crazy the way that seeing those types of things can make us feel. So, yeah, totally relate and think it's definitely important to kind of evaluate your own wants and needs without letting social media, influence you too much.
Right. Like social media is like a selling tool. They're trying to sell
Yeah.
you this picture of what friends look like. And you see it
Mhm.
so often and you're like, this is what friends is. No, that's not what friends is. Friends is like what you have with your
Mhm.
friends. That's real friendship.
Totally. I want to transition into some questions. I got quite a few questions from
Yeah.
my Instagram followers. There were a lot of questions, like I said, regarding cutting off toxic people. So,
Hmm.
do you have any advice on cutting off toxic friendships in a way that isn't like mean or a way that doesn't involve some like big friendship breakup? A lot of
Hmm.
those questions were kind of like, how do I politely and quietly like exit from this friendship.
Mhm. Yeah, I find that that is one of the biggest thing people like struggle with, just like having negative people in their life that
Yeah.
they need to like release now, right?
Mhm.
I would say that there's kind of two ways to go about this if you don't want like a big thing. One is to just start distancing. You know, if they message you, maybe don't reply. You know,
Mhm.
it's just small things. It's not a full ghost because I don't condone like the whole ghosting thing.
Yeah.
I think the other person needs to know like what you're feeling, but it's just
Mhm.
creating some distance so that that can become like the new normal. So sometimes that other person will catch on, right? And they'll start creating distance, your distance, their distance, like it starts growing bigger and that just becomes a new norm, and then you realize you're okay with that. Maybe you didn't want to cut off that friend entirely, maybe you really just needed some distance. So I think that might be a good way. And if you think that no, I do want to cut this person off, then after the distance and after you've evaluated how you feel distancing yourself from them, if you feel like the best thing to do is to just completely end the friendship, sending a text I think is probably the best way. You don't need to get
Mhm.
on a call, like, you know, it's not, it doesn't need to be super, super serious because if it gets too serious, you might not want to do it. So a quick
Yeah.
text like, hey, I know this is awkward and I know I feel really uncomfortable. I don't know how to go about this, but I just don't think that our friendship is working for me anymore. And I really do wish you the best, but I think we should maybe stop being friends. Something like that. That it's acknowledging that
Mhm.
you feel a little uncomfortable doing this, that you're human still, but that like this just isn't working for you anymore. And if
Right.
they come back and reply, just don't reply anymore or say your last piece and then let it end that way.
Mhm. I love that advice, and also to kind of not let things go for too long. I think the distance is a great piece of advice because I know from past experiences, I've had a couple people in my life who it just wasn't working out, we weren't clicking anymore. I knew
Mhm.
that I didn't really want to be in the friendship, but I didn't really do anything about it, and I kind of continued to hang out with them, be friends with them, and it led to a lot of resentment, and that's
Mhm.
not fair to them. Like, they if
Mhm.
especially if I'm not communicating to them, the way that I'm feeling, I can't build up all this resentment to them, and then it ended in, like, a big blowout. So I think just being open and honest with your feelings is great, and I like the distance piece of advice a lot.
Yeah, totally. Like I have this friend who we're friends, but I wouldn't say like we're really, really close. And a lot of the things she does kind of annoy me, right? So I create distance because I can't handle all of her. Like I can take her
Yeah.
in chunks, right? And a lot of people might have friends like this too.
Yes.
And so it's so important for me to set my boundaries and to like create distance. She might text me some, I just don't respond. I read them, I don't respond, like, and that's okay because I
Mhm.
know that that's my boundary. Because I don't necessarily want to cut off the friendship. I do like talking to her, but maybe like once a month. So
Mhm.
that's why I said try the distance because you might realize you do miss that person in a way or do still want to communicate with them. You just don't want to fully be like category like 2, 3, 1 friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had friends as well where I felt like, they're the friends that one-on-one maybe aren't the vibe, but, like, in a group, it's awesome.
Hmm.
Or, like, the friends that are great in little bite-sized pieces, but not, like, too
Yeah.
often. So, just back to your point where there can be different levels of friendships in different categories, but if you do feel like it's getting to the point where you don't want to be friends with someone anymore, um, I think those were great, great little tips. The next question that I wanted to ask was, how do you make friends as an introvert? Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, I think I was like kind of going back and forth with this one as well because I am an introvert.
Me too.
Okay, I'm glad we connect on that.
Yes.
I'm an introvert, and I think a lot of people think you need to be an extrovert and you need to be really confident to make
Mhm.
friends. But in a way, I feel like this is not gonna be received well, but I feel like it doesn't matter if you're an introvert or extrovert. because the way you're going to make friends is probably the same way. Like, you're going to make friends through shared experiences and vulnerabilities. Like, you're you're both going to do that. You're just going to do it at like maybe a different rate. An extrovert might come in and like pull you in, right? And like make you part of their group and friends like really easy, make you feel comfortable, while an introvert might just sit there and ask more questions and kind of warm you up.
Mhm.
So I feel like in a way, like, you're still gonna go through the same routes, the way you'd make friends. I just think the way you go about it will just be different, like the amount of time it takes. I don't know if that made sense, but
No,
that's
that
kind of
that
my
does make
take.
sense. That does make sense, and I that's one of the reasons why I love social media so much because I find it so much easier to connect with people online versus in
Hmm.
person, and I mean, I didn't go out and do much anyways, and then since the pandemic hit, I'm certainly, like, not out and about bopping around.
Hmm.
So, social media, especially through this time, has been a really great way for me to connect with people and form friendships in a way that isn't, like, face to face.
Right. Totally. And I think the one thing I want to add to that is that to make friends, regardless if you're an introvert or extrovert, it takes effort. That's like
Mhm.
point blank, it takes effort. And a lot of the things that we don't want to do is put in effort. Like, the reason you're not making friends or not having all the friends that you want, I will like guarantee you it's going to come down to effort. The amount of your effort you're putting in and then the amount that they're giving you back. So if you're an introvert, you might just have to put in more effort than an extrovert would. But
Mhm.
you must already know that about yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense, which kind of leads into another question that someone asked was how to more effectively make plans with people and maintain those connections with your friends when we're so crazy busy and we have packed schedules.
Hmm.
For example, this was actually one of my friends that asked this, and
Hmm.
she's one of the most amazing people ever. And I think of her as like a ride or die, but I don't get to see her or talk to her as much anymore because of work. She's in grad school, like life just gets crazy.
Hmm.
But I think we both know that we want to put in like the extra effort to get back to how we were. We were roommates. We lived together for a while. So I think we know that we want to get back to that. So do you have any
Hmm.
tips for how to like effectively make plans with someone when life is just crazy?
Yeah. I think, in the pandemic, everything's kind of turned to like virtual. And I think that's the route to go first when you're first
Hmm.
starting to like get back and like make connections and put in that effort. For example, like all my friends, I think, is it all my friends like live far away from me, or at least like
Okay.
in California we always like do it by like 30 minutes or something because traffic is always crazy. So like my friend, like my closest friend, lives like 45 minutes away from me. um so what we do is we just make it an effort to literally like call each other more often, like FaceTime. Like, I'm always on FaceTime with her. Like, it'll
Hmm.
be a minor inconvenience at work happen and I'll text her and be like, "Yo, you free to chat for 5?" And then, if she responds, then we'll like hop on, vent, and then get off. And like that happened all through the pandemic because we used to hang out a lot more often because we worked together. So we were just always hanging out. And then when the pandemic happened and everything kind of separated, we had to just make more of an effort, and we really turned to FaceTime to do that. Just like quick
Hmm.
chats, even if they're 5 to 10 minutes, it helped so, so much. Like, because I really got to know not just the big things that were happening in her life, but like literally the smallest little minor inconveniences. I knew that, and she knew about mine too. And that started
Hmm.
creating like shared experiences and just like a stronger friendship. Um, and then, sorry, your question was about like connecting outside though. Or sorry,
Yeah.
did I answer that?
No, you're good. No, I loved that. That was a great piece of advice because that is a good point, and I think something that I kind of overlook because specifically, like, with this friend, when we're trying to make plans to catch up, it's always like, "When are you free for dinner?" And,
Hmm.
we get busy after work or we're busy on the weekends when it doesn't always have to be that. Like, I don't know why I think past FaceTime where we could each be eating dinner individually, just
Hmm.
FaceTiming. It doesn't always have to be carving out time to see each other in person.
Exactly. Like, you said it beautifully. Like, the fact that you just are busy means that you might not have time to go have dinner, but don't be like waiting for that perfect moment to like hang out and tell them everything. I find when you
Mhm.
hold on to things, you're like, okay, I have this big thing, but I want to wait till I'm in person to tell them. Or like, you just lose the momentum of that excitement that you wanted to tell
Yeah.
them. So my thing is like, tell them now, get on FaceTime, like call them 5 minutes, just be like, it's gonna be 5 minutes, I promise. Hang up after 5 minutes, but keep that going. Like you can create a strong friendship through FaceTiming like 3 times a day. Like that might be too
Right.
much for some people, but like,
Yeah.
pockets of 5 minutes, 3 times a day. Like I know that's what I do. And my friendships are like really strong because of that.
Yeah, I think that's an easy way to stay connected with people and something that I definitely overlook. Like it doesn't like you said, it doesn't have to be like saving everything until that one time that you get to see each
Mm-hmm.
other like once a quarter. It's
Mm-hmm.
a lot easier just to sort of mention things little bit by little bit. And I think that kind of unknowingly you might not pay attention to it, but that kind of stuff is what strengthens that connection and that's what like deepens the friendship. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really good tip, especially for my situation with this friend. Like that could easily be the stepping stones that get us to be like super close again instead of us trying to like desperately find a 1 hour window every like 4 months that we can see each other in person. Like this is a great way to
Mm-hmm.
maintain and like rebuild that connection.
Yeah, 100%. And then like let's say you guys get super close, like closer, right? You get what you want and you
Hmm.
get closer because of like these constant check-ins and this constant talking. Then you probably both are willing to put in more effort to meet up than you might
Right.
be now. Like unconsciously, you might not want to put too much effort because you're not like as close as you used to be. So you're
Hmm.
waiting for that to be closer, like to get together, right? But why do that? Like do what you can now so that
Yeah.
in the future you're like, oh, we're going to put more effort because we are closer. So I think that's, just reverse some things or like try it a different way, and that might lead you to like stronger friendships.
Yeah. You're like clicking puzzle pieces in my brain right now. And it's making so much sense because when it comes to like building new habits, I am such an advocate for like taking very small steps and incorporating, small things each day or
Hmm.
each week that then can build into something bigger. So this is like, duh, that makes sense. Why can't I apply that to my friendships?
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes you just need someone to like point it out for you, call it out, be like, hey,
Right.
you can look left too. Like it's not just right.
Right, right. Well, that wraps up most of the questions that were asked. There were some other questions, but I will point everyone to Iliana's Instagram because she has a wealth of knowledge, great Instagram posts. She's on her stories all the time. I always get something great whenever I am looking at her content. So I will pass it over to you. Go ahead and plug your Instagram, plug whatever else you want to plug, let people know where they can find you.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So my Instagram is drawncircles.co. Like Abby said, I do like weekly themes on there and I dedicate a lot of time and work to making sure I'm keeping up with the themes and posting what people want to see. And then my website is drawncircles.com, and there you can kind of find out a little more about me and how I work with clients. I do a lot of one-to-ones, and I also do group programs that work on like specific topics like career or limiting beliefs, and those like last usually 1 month, and they're quite intensive, and you get a lot out of it. So yeah, that's kind of how you can find me and work with me.
Great. Well, thank you so much again for coming on the podcast. This was awesome. I learned so much. I'm sure everybody listening is going to take lots away from this episode. So, thank you for being a guest. And thank you all for listening. As always, you know where to find me. You can follow me on my personal Instagram at Abby_Wellner, or you can follow the Good Human Instagram at goodhumanpod to stay in the loop on all things good human. Thank you again for tuning in, and until next time, see ya.